Okay, so we're ready to start putting on our Tyvek here. Our openings are all cut out. Everything's swept up and nice and clean. And everything is nailed off and our surface is clean to be able to put this Tyvek on. All right, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and put on one layer of this. I just happen to have a 3-foot roll of Tyvek, but many times they come in a 9-foot roll. So basically the idea is you wanna make a tight envelope with your building. So anytime we have a seam, we're gonna be using this seam tape to make sure that seam is nice and sealed so no breeze can get through it. So if you can go ahead and do the 9-foot roll, just do it because then there's less seams. But if you do have a 3-foot roll, you just have to make sure all your seams are taped. One piece of advice, if you are working with volunteers, a 3-foot roll is actually much easier to handle. If you can kind of imagine a 9-foot roll, once you roll it out this, on the side of a house here, if there's any gust of wind that comes, it's basically a big kite. So this is just a little bit easier for students to handle, for volunteers to handle, and you many times get a nicer finish with the smaller rolls. You just have to make sure you get the seam tape. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna start in one corner. And again, I'm kind of thinking ahead here because I don't want to be taping for days. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start in the same corner on every roll of Tyvek that I do. And the reason for that is I'm basically gonna end up with a cut line on one corner, and then I can just go top to bottom and tape that one cut line instead of just rolling out this wall and cutting it on that corner and then rolling out the next wall and cutting on the corner. There's just less taping to do. So I'm gonna roll a little bit out here. And I'm just gonna let that sit. And what I wanna do is get this bottom here. Oops. It's much easier with a couple people. I wanna get this bottom flush with the bottom of our sheathing here. And I have a stapler. You can use a hammer tack or just one of these push staplers. Basically you push it and the staple comes out. So I'm gonna go ahead and get it started here. I'm gonna overhang it just a little bit because this edge isn't straight. I'm gonna get it flush with the bottom. And I'm just gonna tack it here in the corner a few times. All right. And the reason why I only do that one corner is because if I did that whole edge and I rolled this out here to the rest of the building, I wouldn't be able to pivot like this. So right now I can move this up and down to make sure that this edge is nice and flush with my bottom. If I went ahead and stapled off that whole edge, as I move this up and down, I would get wrinkles like this and it wouldn't allow me to pivot. So I just do that one corner. That way I can get this out quite a ways here. Make sure we're flush. And now I'm gonna take some staples. Oops, make sure we're got the bubbles out. Take some staples here and staple this off. So for right now, I'm just gonna bring this around and let it sit on the ground. Take some slack off. All right, focus on that corner here in a minute. When I come back and staple this off really good. All right, so we got one row here. I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this around the corner and continue stapling. But just kind of a heads up, again, we're in a sheltered area here. Typically you're outside in the weather, and a lot of times you'll have to deal with wind when putting on this Tyvek. So one way to kind of combat that are these button tabs. This has a lot more holding surface than a little staple does. So basically it's just a little tiny ring shank nail with this plastic cap to it. So if you come along here and actually put some of these guys in, that ring shank nail is going to hold that cap nice and tight, and wind can't come through here and pull this off. So what I like to do is I like to go one on top, one on bottom, and one in the middle. These guys like to bend easily. Just like that. And then maybe about every 4 feet, do the same thing, top, middle, and bottom, and that will help to keep it on. It's a good insurance. It may not be windy for 5 minutes, but then all of a sudden a gust will come and it'll blow all the Tyvek off your house in a matter of seconds. So go ahead and take a minute or two to put some of these guys on, just to make sure your Tyvek stays secure. All right, so we got up to the corner here. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and bring this Tyvek on around. I'm gonna show you how we deal with openings. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull this tight. I'm gonna pull it all the way across the door opening here. All right. So now I'm towards the other corner of my home, and what I'm gonna do here, so I'm gonna go ahead and just leave it over the doors and windows, and I'm gonna pivot it so we're flush. I'm pretty lucky here. We got it nice and straight on our first side of the wall. So this side turned out pretty nice and straight as well. But it's more important to make sure that this Tyvek is nice and tight to the house. We don't want to have it going off kilter like this, because then we'll have some bubbles in it and it just doesn't look nice. So let's say you were running downhill just a little bit, and to make it tight you had to stick down just a little bit. That's more than okay. If you have to come up a little bit, that's okay. You can just come back with some Tyvek, a skinny row of Tyvek, and then put some seam tape over it, and you'll be more than fine. But you want to just make sure that this is nice and flat and you don't have any wrinkles. So I'm going to go ahead again. I'm going to go ahead and get this corner stapled off. And then you can have some volunteers coming behind you here and putting some button tabs in. And we'll just continue going all the way around the house here. Okay, one more side. All right, so now what I'm gonna do is I have my corner here. I'm actually gonna come past my corner with a cut. That way I just have a nice flat surface to apply my seam tape to. And I'm also not gonna cut right on the wall sheathing. I'm gonna come back here a little bit, hold it away, that way I don't slice through the Tyvek that's already on the wall. And it helps to have a good sharp blade for this. If you don't have a sharp blade, you'll just kind of tear through the Tyvek, so make sure you have a clean, sharp blade. All right, so now that we have this little flap here, I'm gonna go ahead and bend it around and just staple it into place. All right, so now if you look on this side here, now that we bent this around, every time we add a new row, we'll try to keep this same reveal. That way we can just take one piece of seam tape and come top to bottom and cover that seam up. So what we'll do next, we got our first row on. We're gonna do exactly the same thing with our second row. And we'll start it out here. The only thing being is you wanna make sure you overlap about 2 inches here. So again, we'll start on the side here. We'll wrap around just like we did on the first row, and we'll come back to this point, and then we'll need, it looks like a third and maybe a little bit of a fourth row. So we'll go ahead and keep continuing this process, and then I'll show you how to deal with all of your openings. Okay, so we went ahead and finished Tyvecking the main portion of our house here. We still have the gable ends to do, but I want to show you guys how to deal with our openings here. But before we do that, we're going to go ahead and tape our seams here. It's a good idea to tape them as soon as you can, just because again, wind is your enemy here. If wind can get behind here, again, it'll just rip this stuff off your home. So the faster you get these seams taped, the better for your Tyvek. So you can see here, again, we started in this corner each time and finished in this corner each time. Now we have a seam all the way top to bottom. So we can just go with one piece of seam tape here. I'm gonna grab a ladder. We'll get the top started here. So all you have to do is just make sure that seam is taped, making sure you get contact with both pieces here. Get it nice and flat. So I know a lot of guys, you might think it's really maybe a little too picky, but you want to try to get this tape nice and flat. If you get any wrinkles in it, apparently like wind and breeze can get into those little wrinkles and get into your home. So if you want a perfect job, you just want to make sure that tape is nice and flat. All right, so we're down to the bottom. We'll go ahead and slice this off. And then all we have to do is go ahead and tape all of these seams going around. So what I'm gonna do is start on this corner here, just like we did with our Tyvek. I'm gonna go all the way around. But if there's a portion where your Tyvek goes over an opening, like both of our side doors here, you can go ahead and stop your tape right on that opening. There's no need to go all the way across the opening with tape. It's just a waste of tape. And then you can start on the other side. So let's go ahead and start this side here. All right, so we got a door opening here. I'm gonna go ahead and stop. And then we can go ahead and just trim it here. We're gonna cut this opening out. So the reason why I just went ahead and went over with the Tyvek, we're actually gonna do some cuts here in a minute where we wrap this Tyvek around on the inside. It also just helps to keep the Tyvek going straight. So it's worth the foot or 2 foot that you waste by just going ahead and go over the opening. So gonna find the other side here, and we'll go ahead and start the seam again. All right, so it's the same process all the way around. We'll get this seam taped and then we'll go ahead and get this seam taped as well. Okay, so we finished hanging the Tyvek and we got our seams taped up to this point. So we can go back a little later and finish the gable end, but right now I'm going to show you how to deal with all of your openings in the wall. So the first thing that we're going to do here is we're going to feel around for the opening, and we're going to go ahead and install a few staples right along the edge here. Okay, a few more here. All right, so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna cut this opening out, but what you don't wanna do is you don't wanna go flush with the edge. So basically what we're gonna do is we're gonna wrap this Tyvek around and wrap it onto the inside of our sill and our shoulder studs and our header here. So what we'll do is we'll find where the top edge meets the side here. We're just gonna make a cut from the corner, and you're gonna come down at a 45-degree angle towards the center. You're gonna do that in all four corners. So then on the bottom, you just go up towards the middle at a 45. All right. And then you can just go ahead and connect those four corners. And cut out that Tyvek. So now basically what you have left with is four flaps that you can go ahead and wrap around towards the inside of the house here. So we'll take our staple gun, go ahead and pull this tight and staple it to the inside of the stud. Got a little bit connected here yet. All right, we'll bend that up, nail it to the header. Go ahead and nail this side. All right. So with a door and window, I usually like to do a window pan, and I'll explain that a little bit closer when we get to how to install the window. But what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna cut this bottom flap off flush. And I'm gonna do that because I'm gonna come in here with some window wrap. I'm gonna connect it to the outside of this Tyvek here, but I wanna make sure that window wrap, it has a sticky back to it, just like ice and water. You can actually use ice and water as well. And I wanna make sure that makes direct contact with our wood surface here, so it keeps the water out. So go ahead and cut that bottom flap off and staple both sides and the top to the inside of your window opening. We'll go ahead and do the same exact thing to both door openings. Again, we're gonna cut that bottom flap off and then wrap the sides and top into the inside of our opening. So let's go ahead and do that, and we'll then be ready to install our door and window.